I'm here to just now introduce Tamsin Carvan, who is going to facilitate this event. She's going to be giving a bit of background into what she does at Tamsins Table, which is her small, I guess, hospitality enterprise down in Poowong East, which is doing fantastic collaborative things around local food and really engaging people to come around and share not only the food but their connection with the food and the land. And it's she'll talk a little bit more about that, but she is a local food advocate, very important for us here in Gippsland. You might know her from ABC Radio Gippsland and other various events like Country Style magazine you do some writing for as well. Anyway, but I'll let her introduce herself to you further by explaining a bit more about what Tamsins Table is and about what to expect with the rest of today. So if you could welcome Tamsin Carvan, please, from Tamsins Table.
Okay, it's so exciting to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Jodie, and everyone else who has been so instrumental in organising this amazing event. I feel like we've all been sort of waiting for something like this for as long as I've lived in Gippsland, which is about 15 years. And it truly is a fantastic thing to finally be part of it and feel this kind of force and energy emerging up literally from the earth in this beautiful part of the world. So I've been just asked to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today and pay our respects to the elders past and present and the elders from other communities who may be here today. I also have been asked to say a few words just about the big picture and sort of some of the underlying themes that kind of might tie some of the conversations together today. And it's kind of interesting when I started thinking about that. Sorry, I've got things I'm shuffling and putting everywhere. I'm just going to organise up here. It really struck me that, 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been virtually impossible to pull together a meeting like this today, a session like this today. We're all off, we're far-flung through this large area. We're doing our own things, often with our heads sort of down, looking into our own lives, our own patch of dirt, our own businesses. Perhaps very, very small businesses, perhaps an emerging business, haven't even got off the ground yet. Perhaps very involved in our own communities, but perhaps not very integrated across other communities. And it's really only since the advent of social media, which has been a truly extraordinary thing for bringing small individuals and enterprises, community groups and communities together, that we've been able to actually pull something like this together. And I think that, along with the fact that so many people have actually come and wanted to be part of it, and this sort of hunger to share and to connect and collaborate is there, just shows that all these kind of threads are pulling in the right direction, and the time is really right to get something happening. It's a really exciting thing. I mean, it also just struck me that when I first moved to Gippsland, so I'm not from here, I grew up in the Blue Mountains outside of Sydney, and then sort of travelled all up and down the east coast of Australia, following boyfriends at first, then work, then rain, then beautiful soil. I kind of got, sort of aimed higher and higher as I got on. When I first got down here, I mean, even having grown up in a small community, it just struck me just how strong, how intact, how fully functioning, well-formed and deep the local communities were around Gippsland. I'm living in Poowong East, which is, a perfect example of that. I mean, there's 5th generation farmers there, and I'm kind of one of the only, I guess, interlopers. I mean, nearly the whole valley is still the same people who moved there and farmed that land for generations and generations. And there's very few places you can go in Australia, I think, where that is true, not just in a little part of Gippsland, but all across Gippsland. And I think the issue there perhaps has been that we've had all these amazing little communities, so well functioning, doing so much in their immediate areas, but with their catchment and kind of voice, I suppose, up until relatively recently, only extending as far as the catchment for the local hall. So, and I know this is totally true of us. I mean, people come to our table up on the hill in Poowong East and say, oh, we're virtually neighbours, I'm just over in Strzelecki. And I'm like, I don't know you. You've got your own hall. You know, this is, so we stick together in our little communities, but I think what is really beginning to happen now, and this is the power and the promise of this region, is that the connections are now being made between these strong communities. The communities were beginning to join forces and link up. And this is now, you can feel this momentum that is building, because we're not having to actually build momentum across the whole community. We're just having to join up these already very energised communities and feeling the strength that's coming with that as we do so. And I think that that is a hugely promising and exciting thing to sort of feel and to be in and be a little part of for all of us. Yeah, I guess in terms of, you know, big picture, the big picture in that sense is really this beautiful landscape that is being formed by all of these smaller stories joining together. And I guess, you know, my small story is part of that. So I might just take you through a little bit of my own background now, just so where you know where I sit in the middle of things and my experiences. And after this, I'll take you through the sort of the running order for the day and what to expect next. So just very, very briefly. I've been clicking through my slides unwittingly as I speak. As I alluded to before, I live in a small house, a shack, one might say, on a windy hill in Poowong East, on 113 pretty steep acres. At the time when I bought the farm, I wasn't thinking too much further than a little veggie patch and a couple of chooks and, you know, a bit of a view out over these beautiful hills. With the aid of a really quite small, this is just one part of my garden, a tangly, messy bit where it's on a section of the farm that was compacted for decades under a great big gravel turning circle, which I've found has been quite hard to bring back to productivity, but now really does provide us with a lot of food. So with the aid of this little garden, a little orchard, and really a sort of a fairly disciplined practice of making the most of what we have, we've been able to live almost entirely from our little patch of earth, probably like many of you, for a good number of years, so probably about 13 years. So what happened 13 years ago to spark that change? Well, I guess there was a bit of stubbornness, there was a bit of curiosity, a huge sense of challenge, but above all to eat, a really intense desire to eat food exactly as I wanted to eat it. So to pick it when I wanted to pick it, to grow it as I wanted to grow it, to raise the animals as I wanted to raise them. It's hard to believe now, but 13 years ago, access to good, local, fresh, organic fruit, veg, meat and eggs was actually quite limited in terms of accessing that in this local area. So before our beautiful farmers markets, before the hubs, before a lot of the local retailers who now support these ventures. So I did it myself. The motivation really being to sort of, chase those flavours, but also to do it the way I wanted to do it. But I guess it's been the most amazing education, and for me, kind of a personal revelation in the sense that, letting yourself be open, surrendering, I guess, to the full force of the seasons, to the feeling of abundant times, of lean times, of going without and then making the most of it when you've got a lot. It was really the most amazing thing I could have done for my, as an eater, in terms of an education, and also the most amazing education as a cook, to just sort of give yourself those incredibly strict boundaries and work within them. However, as I suppose, so this is my bottom, I have my top garden and my bottom garden, the bottom garden looking a little bit more orderly than the top garden. But I guess as happens when anyone gardens on any scale, you end up with excess. And I probably was very similar to some of you sitting in this room today, 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, thinking, what can I do with this surplus produce that I've put so much time and energy and care and love into producing, but we just can't use. I was giving it away, I was creating boxes for neighbours, and all sorts of thoughts sort of went through my head about what I could do. But in the end, I decided that much as I loved the food and much as I loved selling food, the thing that I wanted to share more than anything was the sheer joy of eating it. And I thought the best way to do that is to actually have a little tiny restaurant, very tiny, I'm talking 10 to 12 people. And I can see actually people, a couple of you have been actually up to our little Windy Hill and shared that table. Yeah, that's pretty cute. Yeah, so we only seat 10 to 12 people. We have a great big long table, which is actually a Poowong East heirloom, built by one of the original settlers in the area. We only open on weekends for long table lunches, during which everything is cooked on the day, literally in front of you most of the time. It ambles over 4 to 5 hours, and all the ingredients are sourced from either our little patch of earth or from people very, very close to us. So all the wine is intensely local, and we make sure we know the winemakers and know the stories behind everything that we serve. We serve beautiful local cheese. We've served some of Linda's beautiful hazelnuts. We've served all kinds of things that if we can't access it ourselves, we access it from our fantastic collaborators and friends producing beautiful things around us. So I could talk more about, the actual intricacies of the business and what we do, but I thought for the purposes of today, perhaps it's most interesting to actually talk a bit about, what have I learned from doing this business and how might it be helpful for others who are wanting to do a similar kind of thing or to get a food business of any kind up and off the ground, because we're lucky enough to spend extended periods of time with incredibly interested eaters and incredibly interested eaters who have a high disposable income. So it's been a really, really intriguing thing to sit here and often, sometimes locals, but often people from Melbourne who have arrived in the rolling green hills of Gippsland with exactly the same reaction that I had when I first got here, which is, how could I have never been here before? It's so beautiful. Why has no one told me about Gippsland? So I just tried to summarise some of the key learnings here that I feel like we've gleaned over the last few years. Firstly, people coming into this region and even in this region who don't know it perhaps as well as some of us here, are excited and intrigued about Gippsland, and they want to know more. They want to eat more. They love the feeling, any feeling of connectedness and community that emerges from their eating experiences here, and they love it even more when we know each other. So when we put a cheese on the table and can say, Burke Brandon made his beautiful sheep down the road, and then Marcus Satchell made this wine, or Bill Downey made that wine, or Rachel made the cheese, or Linda grew the hazelnuts, then it's this incredible, kind of hunger and love of wanting to know more about what sits behind the food. And I guess that comes back to, it's stories. So there's an incredible hunger for the stories. People want to know more about the produce, and they want to go home with the story. So we're selling food, but we're selling stories about that food as well. Our guests, as I said, are generally quite well heeled, but one thing I've come to realise is that one thing money can't buy is freshness, real freshness. It's very, very hard to access food of high quality and immediate freshness. And that has a taste attached to it that for a lot of people is an absolute revelation. So that's something really, really important for us as small and medium growers in Gippsland to reflect on, I think. People also, there's a huge hunger to want to try different things and learn about what they eat, but it doesn't have to be fancy or super novelty driven or anything like that. We're not talking fennel pollen, or just as basic as eating walnuts freshly shelled. New season walnuts freshly shelled. I mean, that has to be one of the most commented on foods that we put on the table. So many people have never tried it. We're so used to eating beautiful food that comes from our own garden and patch of earth that we forget that for others there's these simple joys out there that are an absolute revelation. So other things that we've found this season, baby turnips. Turnips that big. People who think they hate turnips, eating a baby turnip, eating turnip leaves. Blue cheese cut from a wheel rather than sold in a little cryovac package. The difference between honey harvested in early to late summer. Beautiful local milk I mean, they're simple, beautiful things, but these are the things that people have a hunger for knowing more about. And they're hungry for simple and achievable ways to change how they eat at home. So, you know, they want to learn, you know, just a few small things, you know, the beauty of using fresh garlic, some fresh nuts, you know, the difference that that can make, and how you can drop out using a lot of flavourings and colourings or whatever else people use when you have these beautiful ingredients to work with. So I guess in summary, people are desperate to touch something real and authentic and even be a tiny part of that. You know, so what does that mean for us? I'm just going to quickly wrap this up, but you know, what does it mean potentially for us sitting in this room today? I mean, we're going to come back and talk about more of these things through the day, and I'm sure some of these things will be touched on again and again. But if I had to say, you know, what have I learned and what could I share from being up there and doing this little business, it is be yourself and let yourself be seen. Okay, don't hide. Open your farms and your gardens. Show people what you do. Celebrate it. Delight in it. You know, show them the joy and the beauty of hands in dirt. Build relationships, which is what we're doing today. I learned, it just took me so many years to learn that actually you're only as good as your connections and your collaborators. And having learned that, feeling the force of it and the power of it now is an extraordinary thing. Get onto Instagram. I'll talk about more of that later. We're living in this incredible place, so photogenic. You know, we need to be utilising the tools at our disposal. Figure out what your story is and figure out what you are really selling. It might not be the food. And above all, sell Gippsland. It's going to take a sustained collaborative effort for us to grow the pie for all of us. It's a small pie now, and fighting over a tiny piece of this small pie is not nearly as useful and as productive as growing the pie for all of us. So, you know, first and foremost, we're advocates for Gippsland. You know, and obviously going with that, it goes without saying, be a collaborator. There's really, you know, find a wine that matches the food that you sell, that perfectly goes with your beautiful salad or your cheese. You know, use local milk. Ring someone up and find out what you can put with your produce that will enhance both your offering and theirs. Figure out why you do what you do is special. Figure out what you're selling, why people should love it, why they will fall in love with it, and why should people buy it and eat it. You know, we have the most amazing opportunity here in Gippsland. We're one of the most, you know, I can tell you, having looked intensely at this when I was looking to buy a farm in the first place, we're one of only a real handful of places across Australia that can actually boast, genuinely boast, reliable rainfall, beautiful, fertile soils, access to a big, fantastic local market in the form of Melbourne and export or everywhere beyond, strong communities, an abundance of food and wine, and a deep, deep history in high quality production. You know, we have it all. I guess let's just make the most of it.